So HUBSCO Plus training, we're going to go through what is needed. What you'll learn today, it's an overview of Hub requirements, HUBSCO Plus features, how to log into HUBSCO Plus, and navigating through HUBSCO Plus. We'll talk about adding formal and informal projects and talking about running quarterly reports. We're going to talk about, first off, we'll talk about what is a hub. Per the North Carolina General Statute, North Carolina, it's NCGS 143, 128.4, it's at least 51% of a business is owned by one or more persons who are members of at least one of the groups that are listed below, and that management and daily business operations are controlled by at least one of the owners in those groups. So those certification categories are Black, Hispanic, Asian American, American Indian, female, disabled, and disadvantaged. And those are the terms that are used in the statute. So that's why we use those terms. If the statute was written today, it might have different language, but we use the language from the statute. There is also a newer category called Employee Stock Ownership Plan that talks about the percentage of the members that own stock in the company that would meet those categories that we just mentioned. That one does not have a control aspect to it. It is simply ownership. All right. And we're going to talk about hub construction requirements. I do want to mention that there is some in the state budget process right now. There are a couple of bills from the state side and or Senate side and the House side that would eliminate the hub office, that would do away with hub requirements and good faith efforts for hub. It's not a done deal. So the law of the land is still this, that we seek out hub participation and we report on it. So we're still doing this training. We're still moving forward. We are still open for business. So wanted to start off with hub construction requirements here. So the state building projects, there's a 10% goal for state agencies, community colleges, and public universities. For local governments, which HUBSCO Plus is for the use of local governments, any state fund, if there's any state funds, even just $1 for a building project and the cost is $100,000 or more, then 10% shall be the hub goal. If the cost is $300,000 or more and it's paid with local funds, there's no state dollars, then the goal is established by the local government. This includes projects that are done by a private entity on a facility to be leased or purchased by a local government. And notice and public hearing is required on the appropriate percentage goal for minority building participation for building projects. There is a resource for goal setting that the UNC School of Government has put together, and that link is here in the PDF. By the way, I want to mention as we're going through here, if anybody has any questions whatsoever as we're going through, please feel free to either put them in the chat or to raise your hand or take yourself off mute and ask your questions. I would much prefer that you ask your question when you have it, then you try to hold it to later and you forget what your question was. I want to make sure that you get your question answered, and it's possible that somebody else has a similar question or the same question, and you would be helping them as well as yourself by asking that question and getting the answer that you need. So interrupt as often as you need. So we're going to start with what is HUBSCO Plus. HUBSCO Plus is a reporting system. It was developed by the North Carolina Hub Office and the North Carolina Department of Information Technology, and it allows local governments to have a dedicated method to providing reports of hub utilization on design and construction projects. When we say utilization, we mean you spent money with hub vendors. Note that only local governments, towns, cities, villages, counties, school systems, water and sewer authorities use HUBSCO Plus. Community colleges, public universities, and state agencies use Interscope Plus. This training would not help them to do the reporting that they need to do. They need to report as well. They just use a different system. So I'm hoping we don't have anybody on here who is a community college or a university or a state agency. If they are, then I don't think this will be very helpful to them. I would like to ask for everybody to do something for us. If you could, in the chat, can you go ahead and type in your first name and last name and the organization that you're with? And if you can, please don't use acronyms for your organization, because your acronym and what I understand as acronyms don't necessarily line up. I once went to an event in Durham, and it was apparently a school system event, but they kept referring to themselves as DPS, and I was like, Department of Public Safety's here? And it was not the case. That they were talking about Durham Public Schools. That's not the same thing as North Carolina Department of Public Safety. So that's why I ask for the organization names to be spelled out. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys putting those in there. Okay, so what to know about construction reporting? These are projects that do need to be reported. So building projects that are $30,000 of total cost or more need to be reported. So the building is not actually defined in statute. And the UNC School of Government notes that, and they say that Webster's 11th defines a building as a roofed and walled structure built for permanent use. So that's kind of the way that we look at it. There are certain things that you look at something and say, oh, that's clearly a building. You know, the place that I'm sitting in here today, the Albemarle building, it's clearly a building. There's a roof, there's walls, there's windows, there's air conditioning, electric, light, air, HVAC, all those kinds of things in there. So if it is just a structure that has a roof and no walls, it is a little bit of a gray area. So the gazebo is the perfect example of that, especially if it has no light or water associated with it. You know, that is something where you could say, well, we're going to treat it as a building, or you could say, we're not going to worry about that. We're going to just do it, and we're not going to treat it as a building. I would say one example that I like to use is at a park. If you have a shelter and it is just the beams and the roof and the picnic tables underneath with the concrete on there, and that could be considered not a building. And you could say, maybe I need to worry about this hub stuff, or maybe I don't. And you could make that decision. But if you are building it and you include a bathroom on it, or some kind of facility in it, like to run the electrical or have some water or some plumbing or HVAC at all, then you should consider that a building. It's got walls, it's got a roof. So we would expect you to report that kind of project. This does apply to wastewater treatment systems, wastewater collection systems, and water supply systems and water conservation projects. And you really need to pay attention to the grant funds that you may be using from that. They would probably be coming from Department of Environmental Quality, or loans that you may get. Maybe it's grant funds, maybe it's loans. It will probably specify in there the use of minority firms. So be aware of that. We did try to build HUBSCO Plus so that it would allow for being able to put in linear feet. So if you're just doing piping work, you can put in linear feet, and it may not, you may not have square feet if you're not doing that actual building, but if you're putting in a whole bunch of piping, then you would have linear feet instead. Okay, so moving on. What to know about construction reporting. These are projects that you do not need to report. If it's a prefabricated or relocatable building or a part of it, they don't need to be reported. So you purchasing a trailer that you're going to put on a school system, a school site for additional classrooms. You would not have to report on the purchase of that trailer. From a goods and services standpoint, you would, but from a construction building standpoint and these statutes, it would not fall under this. Any work that's done on the site would need to be reported if it's over that $30,000 amount. So I don't know how much it costs to grade the site or put in the plumbing or the electrical, running it out there, to prep for it. But if it's not if it's not more than $30,000, you would not need to report on that in HUBSCO Plus. Street and utility projects are also not required to be reported, and so streets, roads, bridges, they don't get reported under HUBSCO Plus. If you're doing electrical work or laying some cabling for internet, those kinds of things don't have to be in there. Again, the wastewater treatment and water treatment, those should be included, but those other types of utilities are not required. If you want to include them, feel free, go ahead. Just making sure that you know what has to be reported, what does not have to be reported. Okay, and feel free to ask any questions as we're going along. Construction reporting due dates, these do not change from quarter to quarter or year to year. The only time they ever really have is during COVID and occasionally, and not for everybody, but if a hurricane hits a particular area around the time where this reporting would be happening, we have given some grace in that time when we could. But right now, these are the dates. So the next report will cover April through June. So that's the fourth quarter, and that will be due on July 10th. I want to say that's a Thursday or a Friday. I can't quite remember, but that's when it's due. We strongly encourage folks to get started on entering data far ahead of that time frame. It's really stressful if you immediately start it like the day before it's due and you're trying to pull all the data together. As we're going through this training, you'll understand why that would be the case, because there is a fair amount of information that you would have to provide. These dates are always available on the Hub Office website, and if you have the PDF, you can click on this link. It should be a live link that would take you to the website that includes these reporting periods. And this reminder here, I did not update this, but quarter 4 is what we're reporting on, and the due date would be July 10th. So good faith efforts, you may be familiar with those. For informal projects, the responsibility is on the public entity. Diamond, do you have a question?
I do. Hey, John and everybody. So if you have no activity to report, do you still have to mention that, right? Or something to that effect?
Yes, ma'am. And we have a couple slides on that, so we'll
okay.
get to that
Sorry.
shortly. No, it's okay. It's a good question to ask. So we want to make sure that we get there. So yes, and the short answer to it is yes, HUBSCO Plus has a way for you to indicate you didn't have any projects completed during that time period. And we'll show you what that looks like in a few minutes. So talking about good faith efforts, the responsibility for informal projects is on the public entity, and they have to solicit minority participation in contracts for the erection, construction, alteration, or repair of any building awarded pursuant to this section. So that would be new projects, repair projects, renovations. So those different kinds of projects would be included. You have to maintain a record of the contractors solicited, and that means it says contractors, it doesn't say minority contractors. So that is all contractors that you solicited, whether they are minority or not. And in this case, minority really means hub. You have to document your efforts to recruit minority business participation in those contracts, and you have to report all data and documentation of efforts to recruit minority participation to the Hub office upon completion of the report. So that says completion of the report, but we do encourage folks to get a head start on it, so that, once you put that out for bid or you get bids in, you can start entering data. You don't have to have every single piece of data to get a project going in HUBSCO Plus. Please note that for informal projects, formal advertisement of bids is not required. And that the formal dollar range goes from 30,000 up to 500,000, but that overlaps with the requirements of 143, 128.2, which is the more formal hub reporting and good faith effort requirements. And School of Government, the UNC School of Government, has recognized that there is that overlap. And what they recommend is, when there is overlap in statutes, to go with the more restrictive statute. And in this case, it would be 143, 128.2, because it has more defined things that you have to do as a public entity. So anything $300,000 and above, you would need to be paying attention to these good faith efforts for the public owners. There are some good faith efforts for the bidders, and they're not on the informal projects. So the formal project good faith efforts include developing and implementing a hub participation outreach plan, and all of these are, like I said, for the public entity. So develop and implement a hub participation outreach plan, attend the scheduled pre-bid conference. Should be a fairly easy one. Notify interested hubs about opportunities to bid on a project at least 10 days before bid opening. And notification must include a description of the work, the date, time, and location where bids are to be submitted, the public entity's contact person for the project, where bid documents can be reviewed, and any special requirements for the project. So if you use the electronic vendor portal system, a lot of that information is included in that. And those projects do flow into the Hub office's solicitation opportunity dashboard that vendors can go to and look for opportunities. If you don't use EVP, you can still submit opportunities to the Hub office website and that dashboard, and primes can do that as well. So general contractors may be looking for vendors to do work on your project. They can submit something to our website. The other things that this says for good faith efforts for public entities: use other media likely to inform hubs of the opportunity to bid. And that could be local newspapers. We do have a list of minority focused media outlets on our website. So you could reach out to them. Some of them are geographically focused, and some have, a different focus or a different audience that they're trying to reach. I'm going to pause here for questions, and we haven't gotten to Diamond's question yet, but we're about to. So any questions at this point? And again, feel free to put that information in the chat if you have specific questions too. Okay, so we'll move forward, but I just wanted to pause and let people ask questions. Okay, so we're going to start with the HUBSCO Plus login. There's actually a link to HUBSCO Plus on the Hub Office's website. That link that we shared earlier with the due dates, the HUBSCO Plus link is on there as well. So if you had a user ID in the old HUBSCO system and you haven't used it until now, your user ID is the same as what it was before. It has not changed. And if you don't remember what that was, that's okay. You can reach out to myself or Roxanne Waller, who's the Hub coordinator in the Hub office, and we can I did tell you what your user ID is, or say, you know what, we don't see you in here. Let's see if we need to add you as a user. Um, if you did use HubSco before and you have not logged in now, your user ID is what you use for user ID. And the first time you log in, it will also be the password. And as soon as you enter that in and hit login, it will want you to change your password. So we no longer have the capability of revising your password. You can use that forgot change password item right there on the login screen um, to reset it yourself. Once you log in, you'll come to the main screen and it will show you all of the informal projects and formal projects that you have open that you haven't finalized. Once you finalize them, they'll disappear from this list, but you'll still be able to see them in a different way. Um, and here are some important features of HubSco Plus. You can search for vendors, hub and non-hub vendors. You can, once you select that vendor, it will auto-complete all the information that it has for that vendor. So you don't have to type in that information again. And you can switch between formal and informal projects if you need to. I've had to advise some people in the previous system that, oh, hey, you spent all this time entering it in as an informal project, but it needed to be entered as a formal project. And I couldn't do anything to help them. They had to go back in and totally re-enter all the data. And it was harder and more time consuming with the previous system because it didn't auto-populate anything. So knowing that that happens once or twice, we made it possible for you to go in and say, oh, we set this up as an informal, but we meant it as a formal, and you have a way to switch it. And you could do it in reverse. If it was formal, but you started entering it as a formal project in HubSco Plus, but it was really an informal, you can switch it back to an informal. There are different fields that are asked for based on formal and informal. So that's why you need to switch back and forth, and you can't just, there's not just one way that you can do it. All right. So moving forward, a few tips and tricks about HubSco Plus login. Um, this was designed to help you through it to log in. It shouldn't be too hard to log into HubSco Plus, but we wanted to make sure that you were aware of some things to know. And you can find the tips and tricks at the PDF. That should be a live link in the PDF that was sent out today. You can also email us at hubsco@doa.nc.gov and ask for assistance. But basically, if you go in and you try to log in and it says your account is locked, you just need to wait about 2 hours before you try to log in again. And what I would suggest is if you try to log in, it says it's locked, you wait that 2 hours, try once to log in with the user ID and password that you remember. And if that doesn't work, don't try it again and again and again. After that first time, go ahead and select forgot password. And then you'll receive an email notifying you of a temporary password. They really strongly encourage you not to copy and paste it because sometimes there are spaces afterwards and that could mess up your ability to get in. So it really encourages you to literally type the temporary password in, and then you can reset your password to what you want to do. Okay. Again, we can't reset the passwords. That capability is in your hands as a user. So the HubSco Plus inbox, the HubSco, it can show projects, all projects for an entity or just the person who logged in. And you can switch back and forth with that. It'll show the informal projects at the top and then the formal projects at the bottom. All right. So we have had some times where folks needed to see somebody else's projects that were created because that person left the organization and it was still an open project. So switching to all projects for the entity would allow you to see every project that's open. not just ones that you created. All right. When you get to that inbox, it'll show the project name, number, project name, the date it was created. It'll give you the opportunity to edit it with that little icon under the edit column. That's like sort of a piece of paper and a pencil. And it gives you the opportunity to delete things too, which is right next to the edit button. Maybe a little bit too close, but it won't automatically, if you click that delete thing, it doesn't just go boom, it's gone. It will ask you to say, are you sure you want to get rid of this? And if you are, you can do that. That's okay. But just know, once you delete it, it's gone. You can't get it back. There is not a oops button that you can do that with. So be careful about deleting things. And you can add new projects up here right above where it says edit and delete. There's add informal, and it would say that for the formal projects too. So you can click on that and start creating a new project. Okay, so HUBSCO Plus administration. So this is where we're going to get into that whole we didn't have any projects this quarter piece. So this is for anybody who is listed as a HUBSCO system administrator. There are users and there are system administrators. Users can enter data, they can pull reports, but system administrators can do more. So when we're navigating through, up at the top, there are drop-down menus, and you just hover over the word administration projects or reports. You hover over it and it'll open up the menu, and then you click on what you want to do. This morning, when I sent out that email that did not have the PDF attached to it, I was using send email with that. And apparently I went over the size limit for the PDF. And that's why it wasn't attached today. At least I think that's why. You probably won't use this feature, the send email, because you probably can just use your own email system to inform people. This would only reach the people who have HUBSCO Plus accounts for your organization. So if only 3 people have an account or have login IDs, that's not going to be terribly helpful to you. There's probably a more efficient way of communicating with them. But this allows us to send out emails to either certain people or everybody with a HUBSCO account. That administration tab also allows you to add and edit new folks and delete them as well if you need to. The projects tab, there's a main page, project inbox, search for projects, informal project, add new, formal project, add new, and the no quarterly project submittal. So if you're a system administrator, you'll see that last bullet. If you're a user, you will not see that last bullet. The report tab also has a number of reports. We've actually added on to it to show like projects awarded and projects finalized. So you can see that report as well. Here are the system administrator screens. If you hover over administration on the hub screen or the home screen, you can select public entity and put in your organization should pop up, and it will allow you to edit information about the organization overall, as well as the users. So if you clicked this edit icon over here, it will bring you to this screen that shows basic information about your organization, your what type of entity you are, your school system or a municipality or county government, the address there, main phone number, and then you'll have a primary contact and a responsible official contact person. And sometimes those can be the same person, but they do not have to be. They can be different people. And you can change almost all of that information. There's 1 or 2 things that you can't change. But you do have the ability to say, was a minority business outreach plan developed and implemented? The answer should always be yes, but we want you to be truthful. So if it's no, then put in no. The verifiable percentage goal will default to 10%, and you can modify that if you need to. There had been, at least in the past, some organizations that set their goals up by ownership category. So we made that a capability, and it's an either the 10% goal, like, I mean, it could be something different than 10%, but either you would fill out that verifiable 10% goal, or you would fill out the ownership category part. You wouldn't do both of those. Okay, and so it's got a couple of other questions on there as well that you would try to answer. There is an online HUBSCO Plus access request form for entities that do not already have an account. So I think everybody on this call already does. Let's see. Okay, just looking at the chat. Somebody was saying, what's it say on Forsyth County Schools as an administrator? Okay. So we'll take care of that. Click user for list of staff with HUBSCO Plus access. So this is your staff that have access to this. And as a system administrator, you can add new users. You can edit existing users. Sometimes their emails change, names change, phone numbers change, and you need to update that. And maybe somebody started out and you had them listed as user as their access level, but then something develops and you need to list them as a system administrator. You can change that as well. You can also delete existing users. If somebody has left the organization, retired, for whatever reason, they're no longer with you, you can delete those users. They will not be able to log in again. Their information will stay in the system. If they did something and they created something, it will still list them, but they just wouldn't be able to log in. The edit and add screens are the same. It's just that edit screens are already filled in and the add screens are blank. So the login ID is something that you will enter in. We use a system here. If you contact Roxanne or I, we start with the first letter of the first name, and then the first three letters of the last name, then the 2-digit month and 4-digit year that login was created. That helps us reduce duplication. We have had some times in the previous system where people had the same login IDs, and that caused some confusion. And while it should not happen anymore, being able to set these IDs this way reduces that chance even further. So you do have to use a username. That's the first name in one block and the last name in the other block. You've got a phone number. You've got the option for extensions. You have to include their email address, and then you have to select your security access. And you'll notice down at the bottom, it says date added, added by, date updated, updated by. So that gives you a little bit of auditing capability to say, okay, who added this person? When was this person added? Were they added in 2002? Are they still a valid user? It's entirely possible they are, but it might be the kind of thing where they're like, okay, they were added a long time ago. I don't know that they're still valid. Maybe we should delete these. And then it would also say date updated, so you can know, hey, somebody made a change. It doesn't tell you what the change was, but it just says a change was made for this login ID. And that could be email, it could be username, whatever. It's just to give you a sense of when the last time something was done with that login. And again, for security, there are some other options listed there, but we would highly encourage you just to use user and public entity system administrator as your options. So here's that no project quarterly submittal. So if you've gone through the entire quarter and no projects have been finalized, you can come in here. If you're a system administrator, you can come in here, hover over the projects tab up at the top, select no quarterly project submittal, and it will open up a new screen that'll say, by clicking on the button below, you're reporting for this organization that you do not have any projects, formal or informal, that have been completed within that particular quarter. And it will list the quarter at the end of that paragraph, as well as sort of the title or header for this screen. If it is true and you have no projects finalized for the quarter, go ahead and click no projects this fiscal quarter. Only system administrators have this access. If you're not sure or you're still working on something, I would say hold off on this. And the timing of this does matter. So you can use this button up until July 10th to say, we didn't have anything for quarter 4 of fiscal year 24-25. But if you go in on July 11th and you use it, it's going to think you're talking about the next quarter, which would be quarter 1 of fiscal year 25-26. So you do have to be a little bit careful when you use it, but it is very helpful for us to know that people are actually paying attention. They're following the requirements for reporting, and we highly encourage folks to do it. When we do post our annual reports, we do list how many quarters an entity reported. So 0 is always bad. 1 or 2, it's like they kind of did it, but maybe they only had 1 or 2 projects in a fiscal year. But it's entirely possible to go for a long time without finalizing any projects. Some of these projects, they have gotten bigger and bigger over the years. So it may take 2 or 3 years from the start of a project to when it's totally finished. Doesn't mean you can't enter data to HUBSCO Plus in the meantime, but you wouldn't finalize it until it's all said and done. All the money has been spent, and you're not still waiting on something to be done on the project. I hope that makes sense. And Diamond, did that answer your question? Do you feel like you understand what you would need to do?
Absolutely. Thank you, John. Also, just wanted to let you know, and I don't know if it happened for everybody else, but you were cutting out in the last couple of things that you were saying.
Okay. Do you happen to recall the last thing I did say?
It was cutting in and out. Not really.
Did it cut in and out while I was doing this screen, the no quarterly project
Yeah.
submittal? It
Yeah,
was.
at the end of when you were doing this screen here.
Okay. I think what I was probably saying there was that the timing matters, and you need to make sure you do it before the reporting period due date. But you would not want to do it early in the quarter. So we want to make sure that we capture everybody's information. And when we do our annual reports, we do list how many projects or how many quarters organizations reported. And that can go from 0 to 4. Much nicer to see 4 than 0. 0 seems to be saying that you're not doing anything relating to reporting and theoretically not following the hub requirements. So much nicer to see a 4 than a 0 on the annual report for the number of quarters reported. I hope that makes sense. And let's
Yes, thank you.
move along. And if you hear that again, feel free to put something in the chat or take yourself off mute and tell me that, and I'll try to repeat what I said. So we're going to talk about adding formal and informal projects. We're going to go through screens that are related to formal projects, but they're very, very similar. And we're going to do this as if it was a single prime project. HUBSCO Plus does have the ability to do separate prime, design build, CMRs, all that, but we're focusing on the screens as if this was a single prime project. It's just a little easier to go through that during training. So key tips to remember: when you're entering things in, use whole numbers only. Don't use decimal points. Enter in 25000 rather than 25000.00. That can cause problems, especially if you do 25,000 in one place and 25.00 in another. So whole numbers only, no decimal points. There are different ways to add a project. You can add it from your inbox, and you can also add it from the projects drop-down menu. And there is a flow for adding projects. Some of it you have to do, and some of it you have some flexibility, but this is the flow that we recommend. First off, you have to add a formal or informal project. That's either from the inbox or the project drop-down screen. Then you have to do the project main data entry screen. And you can, stop there and come back to it later on. But when you do come back, we would recommend that you go next to the primary designer screen. Once you finish entering data there, then you go to the construction contract screen. You have to do that before you can do the construction contract solicited directly screen or the contractor used screen. And the the solicited directly screen is required for informals. It's optional for formals, though we would encourage it if you reached out directly to vendors. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. And then you have the project view and finalized project. So finalized project would be the last thing you could do. But we encourage you following this order. The main thing that you could do is you could skip over the designer and go to the contract part. But then you might forget about entering designer information. So that's why we encourage you to follow this path. So the project main data entry screen has a number of required fields on it, like the project number, project name, the location of the project, the total square footage, the original value, and if there were any state funds. If you were doing a regular building, you would enter in the square footage, however big the building was. If you're doing like a wastewater pipe laying project, then you would not have square footage, but you would still need to enter a 0 under total square footage, and then you could enter in whatever linear feet you used for the project. So your options at the bottom there are to save the project, to reset it, or to cancel it. And at this point, if you cancel it, there's not going to be a project related there. You could save it, and you could go along and do something else and come back to it later and fill out the other tabs. But saving the project allows you to keep going or pause if you want to. If you're on this screen and you hit reset, it keeps you here. It just clears everything out. And canceling would bring you back to the previous screen. Once you enter the data in, it will look like this on the right side of your screen. And it'll show these tabs up at the top. So project, designers, contracts, project view, finalized project. The project main view, again, that's what you entered in. It does have the ability to edit that project, and or you can go to the other tabs and start working on those items. We would encourage that your next step be the designer portion, though. Okay, so we're going to talk about designers for formal and informal projects. And to add a designer, you click on the designer tab, and then you would add new prime designer down at the bottom, click that button. And then after you add the new prime designer, it will bring up the screen that shows company name, contact last name, address, that sort of information. You can fill that in directly, but if you just type in the company name that you wanted to include, you can do a search for that vendor. So you type something in for the company name. Doesn't have to be the entire company name. If you're looking for Metcon Construction, you could just type in Metcon. and then click search, and it will look for Metcon, and it will bring up all the options that might be in EVP. So this is connected to the electronic vendor portal system, which has over 40,000 vendors in it. So it is possible that the vendors you're using are not in EVP. If they are in EVP, it's easier. You click on it, it populates pretty much the rest of that that screen. If you did not have them, then you can enter them in directly, and you can say add new designer. And then you can fill in the field as needed. So in here, this would be manually entering it in. You indicate what kind of service they have, what discipline they're using. And these types of services and disciplines are listed here. This is your resource for that. You can click on the little down arrow to see what those all are, but this is a resource for you to come back if you ever are like, oh, I need to choose a discipline. What are the discipline options? You can come to this PDF and say, oh, here's where they are. And once you enter in all this information, you may not have your final contract value, but when you get started, you should have an original contract value, and then you can save that and enter it in. There are some fields that are going to be required. The contract values are really not one of those at this point. So you may be able to come back later on and enter them in. And it looks like we have a hand up. Megan. Hi, Megan. You want to take yourself off mute? If you are asking a question, I cannot hear you. Let's see, but you did put something in there. What if the vendor has a different contact name than what we are using? For HUBSCO Plus purposes, it doesn't really matter who your contact is with it, because we're looking at the company and whether they're Hub certified or not. And a company can have multiple contacts. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so moving on. And that whole aspect of searching for vendors and selecting them and it populating, that works on the contract side and the construction, the contractors that you're looking at, whether they're ones you reached out to or ones that you used. So it will function the same way. After clicking save, you'll see a screen that shows what you just entered. It'll tell you what kind of contract it is. It's a designer, who is the contractor or the designer, type of service. All that information will be listed there. And if you didn't enter any data, it will just be blank. And you have the option to edit that data. You can delete it, or you can add a consultant. If they are a prime designer and they have consultants underneath them, and you hit delete, it will delete all the consultants. So you do need to be careful about when you delete. And when you add consultants, it will be pretty much exactly the same looking screen. It will just already have Sarah Smith listed as the prime designer, and then you would be adding a consultant and searching for that consultant, putting in the company name, doing search, selecting it, and it'll populate, and then you can save it. And you can add in any contract dates and contract values as needed. So now we're going to move on to construction contracts. So we've taken care of the designers, and now we're moving on to the contracts part, and that's where the contractors will show up under. Once you click on the contracts tab, you'll click add new construction contract, and your contract description ID, this can be whatever you want it to be. Like when you're creating the project originally, there's a project name, there's a project ID, you can, and this ID, it's totally up to you what those IDs are and what they should look like. I hope that you have a logical system that says, okay, maybe it's the fiscal year 25. So it starts out 25 dash, it's the 12th project we initiated this year. So maybe 25-12, or maybe you have some other system. It doesn't really matter to us as long as you have some information in there and that you know what project you're looking at. So that contract description ID, it might be the same as your project name, but it might not. You may have a reason that you want it to have a different name. Then you have the contract method of advertisement. Was it published and electronic? Was it just electronic? Was it just published? Or is it not applicable? So that would be choices that you have to make. And then you have the bid opening date, contract date, notice to proceed, contract date, and the contract completion date. And when you're first entering this data in, those contract descriptions, contact method of advertisement, and contract date are all required. Everything else is optional. And if you leave them blank, it'll be okay. You can come back and add it later on. After clicking, entering in what you need to do, click save, and you'll be able to see the contract that you've entered, and you'll have some actions that you can take. You can edit what you just entered. You can go to contractors solicited directly. So, or go to contractors used or delete the contract. So contractors solicited directly is required for informal projects. It's not required for formal projects. But if you reached out directly to somebody, picked up the phone and told them about it, or you sent an email to a small list, but not, a giant mass mailing list, then you could enter in the contractors under solicited directly. And you can also delete the contract, and deleting the contract will delete everything under it. So if you've already entered your contractors used or solicited directly, be very careful with delete contract. Again, it goes away. You will not be able to get it back. Contractors solicited directly. When you're doing that, you would select go to contractors solicited directly and say add new contractors solicited directly. And you would have the ability to search for the firm name. So I would encourage you to type in the beginnings of the firm name and then click search. And oops, moved along too much. You would enter in information about the primary type of work they were doing, the date you contacted them, how you contacted them, did they submit a quote, what was the amount of the quote. Those are not necessarily required. The required fields are the firm name, the address, city, state, zip, type of work, date contacted, and was a quote received. Those are all required fields. That last one, the amount of quote received, is optional. And again, this is optional for formal projects, but encouraged, and it's required for formal projects. All right. This is again the how to search for contractors solicited directly feature. So you would enter in the criteria in the form, and you don't have to enter in all that information. If you just know the company name, you can put that in there. If you forget the company name, but you remember the contact, you could try to look for it by the contact last name. If there was no contractor found, meaning they are not registered in the electronic vendor portal system, you can click add new contractor solicited and enter that information manually. So when you do that, this is what it looks like, and you would have to enter in all this information. After you add the contractor to the project, and this is if you, let's see, I want to make sure that I'm looking at this. So the adding contractors to the project that you're going to use is very similar to those solicited directly. But it just has a different link to get to it. And this is if you had entered in the firm name, and you've got that S&J construction, it shows where they're located. It's saying they're not a minority firm. That source of ownership is either not applicable or the hub office. There's not other sources of ownership there. Then you have the contract dates and contract value, and you can enter a subcontractor under there as well. It's going to be the same way that you would enter in the contractor. You would enter in their firm name, city, state, original contract value, and contract date. Those are the required fields. Before you can finalize the project, you will need to enter in the completion date information and the final construction dollar value as well. All right. Let's see. Once you have, if you add this as a subcontractor, it will tell you who they are subcontracted to, who their prime is. And on the screen, after you save that, it will show you that you added them in. So S&J Construction, I know that they're the prime because under the tier column, it says 0, and that means they're the prime contractor. And then Melissa's Construction is a tier 1 subcontractor to S&J Construction. And it is possible for subcontractors to also have subcontractors, and they would have a tier 2 would be the assignment for them. And you do need to be maybe a little bit careful. If you're trying to add a new subcontractor to the prime, make sure you're doing it up here under the add subcontractor for that prime. We have had people who have added subcontractor under another subcontractor, and then it looks like that subcontractor has a sub as well, when it's not really the case. So you want to be a little careful about where you add those. Once you've entered in all your contractors and subcontractors, you can see all the information that you've added. And actually, you can do this before you enter in any contractors or subcontractors too. It just won't have as much data if you didn't enter that information in. So it'll have the main project data page. It'll have the designer information, who you reached out to, the who you solicited, as well as which contractors you actually went ahead and used. And it will have some calculations here about totals for the contract and hub participation as well. When you're ready to finalize the project, you would come to the Finalize Project tab, and it would show you any errors that it detects. And I could totally understand if you just spent hours on entering data, and I hope it doesn't take you hours and hours to enter data. But if you spend a lot of time entering data and you come here and you see this is an error page and it's showing all these errors on here, that could be kind of disheartening. But I have to say this is my favorite page in HUBSCO Plus, and it's really from my perspective because Roxanne and I would have to help people figure out what's going on with their project, and this helps us do it. So if you ever run into this and you're like, I just cannot figure this out, take a screenshot of this and send it to us and say, can you help me? And it would help if you included the project number and project name at the top. So if you're doing that screenshot, include that so it's a little easier for us to locate the project and we can go in and take a look. But it will tell you the page where it was a problem. That first error is the main project page. So that would be under the project tab right above where it says error page. And that lists the field construction value. It's our final construction value is the field that is the problem. It says it's a 0 is the value in the field. And if you're finalizing it and it's the final construction value, it needs to be greater than 0 in order to finalize it. Because what are you capturing if you don't have that? So what you could do there is you could say, oh yeah, so our total contract on this one was $250,000. So I'll enter $250,000. It is also saying on the construction contracts tab that the bid opening date is not entered, and the notice to proceed contract start date was not entered either. And you would need to enter that information in order to make these errors go away. And if you are prepared to make those changes, you can click directly on the error page there. It's actually a link, and it will take you to the page where the error is. So you can click on that and make the change to the error. And once you save it, if you got there to the error page that way, you save it, it will bring you back here and it'll show you only the remaining errors. So if you went to the main page and you, or to this construction contracts page, and you put in the bid opening date, the notice to proceed, construction contract completion date, and then you hit save, and it would bring you back here. And if you had done it right, those would go away. They would not show up on this screen. It would show you the remaining error pages that you need to deal with, and then you could work your way through those. So again, I really like this screen because it tells me where I need to go to look for something, what field is the concern, what's the problem, or what's the value of that field, and what's the problem. All right. So if everything is good, it doesn't detect any errors, it will give you the ability to finalize the project. And you go to the Finalize Project tab. You were probably already there if you were seeing error screens, because if you have errors and you click Finalize Project, it'll show them. Once you've dealt with all the errors, it will show you the main project data. It'll basically look like a project view, but you'll have the ability to finalize it at the end. And once you're done finalizing it, there's no way to go back for you to edit the project. If you needed to, you would need to contact Roxanne or I and say, hey, can you unfinalize that project? And then I could make edits, and we would say, okay, yes, we'll need very specifically the project number, and then we could unfinalize it. But once you finalize it and it's looking good, it will say project, and you clicked finalize, it'll say the project data was submitted successfully by this person on this date for this organization. And it'll give you some information here about, make sure you keep the information for 3 years once you're done, and it'll tell you copies of solicitations, what kinds of things to keep there. So this screen indicates you've successfully submitted and finalized your project. And what I would suggest, you don't have to do this, but you might want to, is take a screenshot of this so that you have documentation. Hey, I submitted this. There should not be a reason why after you submit it, you couldn't figure out that, hey, I submitted it on this date. But it's just additional documentation for you to show somebody else in your organization it was submitted. Okay, so once you click Finalize Project, it'll show that project data was successfully submitted. You can't return to the project to complete edits. If you wanted to do that, you would have to contact us. We'd unfinalize it. Then you could make edits and refinalize it. Again, take a snapshot or a screenshot, snippet, whatever you do, print screen, to show that you had completed this, and keep your documentation for 3 years. There are some reports available, and we actually have a few more reports available than we used to. So you would hover over reports, and you would select one of the reporting options: annual, quarterly reports, total construction dollars per construction method, total construction dollars per type of work. And you would enter in the information that you're looking for, and you would get your report. So in this example, this is entering in the ending fiscal year for the report. So this one example, we were looking at fiscal year 22-23. Under fiscal year, you would actually type in 2023. For this year, if you were looking for reports, this fiscal year, you would type in 2025, and so on. And you can set that type of project that's either formal or informal or all, and you may have a reason to look for it based on type of project. Usually I just leave that as all. And then you could enter in, what quarter you're looking for. You can select all quarters, 1 quarter, 2 quarter, 3 quarter, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. You could select it if you want to see specific quarters. And then the contract type, construction, design, you can select those. And then it would provide you the report. And typically it will be in this format, depending on which report you pull. So it'll have your agency name. This one says construction. Here's the total hub amount, total dollar amount spent. And then it calculates the hub percentage. And it shows which categories the spending fell under for the hub certification. Then you can also see type of work, and that will be by specific hub certification category. Similarly, construction methods, you can see all of the different construction methods and the spending by certification category. So do we have any questions at this point? I'm going to scan through the chat, make sure there's nothing in there. Okay. All right. There are some HUBSCO Plus resources that you can use. If you need a new user, you can request access, or you can email us at hubsco@doa.nc.gov. And that's also if you forgot your login ID, you can email us about that. The link to log into HUBSCO Plus is right there. This is for local public entities, and there are a bunch of training resources, a little bit of welcome to HUBSCO Plus with a little bit of history to it. And then there's informal project training. There is an informal project checklist and a formal project training and formal project checklist, as well as hub construction requirements. That's a little bit older of a presentation. And then good faith effort example. And there's also links to the annual and detailed reports and construction expenditure reporting as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to get out of this. I wanted to see if I could pull up this is actually HUBSCO. And so if I hover over it, it'll show public entity or send email, projects, main page, search for projects, unfinalize a project. So you won't see unfinalize a project. That will not be an option for you, but Roxanne and I would see that. And then the reports, we have these reports. You can also do finalized by quarter and awarded by quarter. But that's actually not what I was hoping to show you. I wanted to bring you to the Hub Office website and show you. This is under Hub Construction Expenditure Reporting, guys with the shovels. And I wanted to show you what the checklist looked like. So this is an informal project checklist, and it shows every field that you might come across in HUBSCO Plus and by the specific tab. So that one's the project tab, and it will show you, hey, here's the field, and is it required at entry or at finalization? Some of them might be optional, like linear footage and design related services value and this miscellaneous cost. Those are all optional, but the others are required either at finalization or when you're first entering this information. And this over here is just for you to say, okay, on this project, I've already entered this, I've already entered that, just so you can see what it is you've done and what it is you might still need to do. So we've also got that for the designer tab for the prime designer, for the contract, the designer tab, contract tab, solicited, contractors solicited directly, contractors used, any subcontractors. And if you have multiple subcontractors, if you print this out, you may want to make a copy of this a few times to be clear that you've captured everything. You may not need to fill this out. You could just use it as a reference and say, here's what I know I'm going to need before I open HUBSCO and start entering data. Let me go get that information so that I can have an easier, quicker time of doing the data entry. All right. So yeah, just wanted to show you that. And that is, really the end of our presentation. So here's our contact information. This is our main number, 984-236-0130. And you can also use the email hubsco@doa.nc.gov.